Anything they noticed or had trouble with during that?
Yeah, I got one.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure, but I think you mentioned 20 seconds, but it seems like 5 seconds was like the maximum you want to be up there when you pop up. That'd be accurate?
Well, if you're starting, low and you're getting a little bit higher and higher, make an assessment. Just constantly assess. Do you feel really vulnerable? 20 is probably about the max you get to. If you're a switched on crew, you know what you're doing, you have a good mark, you know what you're expecting, because you're kind of hunting on those engagements, you're kind of hunting for where the target was. If you know right where it is, you pop up, you haven't seen it within the first few seconds, if it's a high threat target, go ahead and pop back down and try again from somewhere else. Another thing worth noting is that in all those engagements, well, half of you had one engagement area, half of you had the other. The second engagement area, you had a limited room to maneuver in that. In reality, especially if you're fighting high threat stuff, if you pop up, there's high threat in the area, it takes a shot at you and you don't get it, you're going to have to move more than 100 meters to come back up at him. So you just need to assess the surrounding terrain. If you have to go 500, 600, 700 meter detour to get a better shot, go ahead. It's better to do that than to try and pop up again and hope you're faster than he is. Now, does anyone else have questions? For the pilots here, how many of you feel confident in doing auto rotations in general?
Pretty confident.
Very confident.
Yeah.
Good. How many of you feel confident doing tail rotor loss recovery?
Extremely confident.
Yep.
Pretty good.
All right, the principles of all of this are the same as in any helicopter, really. If you have a tail rotor loss, you increase speed. You gain altitude, increase speed, and kind of bounce your way out of it, or rock your way out of it. Auto rotation, the key thing to remember in a Cobra, assuming your gunner is alive, because, when you get in a state where your engine dies, it's entirely possible your gunner died with it. If the gunner's there, you make sure, and he should be aware of this as well, he needs to be scanning down and calling out any obstructions as you auto-rotate down. As far as the type of emergencies, we'll go over this very quickly. There's a fuel issue. Fuel issues come in two primary forms. One is you have a fuel leak. If you have a fuel leak, you'll be able to assess how long it's going to take. It'll be a gradual leak. You won't be surprised by it. If you have a fuel leak, you stay on station as long as you can. Determine what your bingo fuel is, which is when you have only enough fuel to get back to base. When you reach that point, go ahead and RTB. If there's a repair truck, a fuel truck, whatever, use it and get set up again. If you're bingo fuel, that's the other option. Just fly back to base and refuel and rearm if you can. So fuel emergencies are pretty boring, pretty easy to deal with. Next one's tail rotor loss. Tail rotor loss can happen in many different forms. You can have a lot of severe damage accompanying it, like you took a big burst of cannon fire across the entire airframe and lots of shit's going wrong, everything's red or yellow and orange. Or sometimes you get plinked in the tail and you lose your tail without anything else being lost. When your tail's totally gone, it stops functioning, that's a severe problem. You really can't stay on station like that. The only time you would is if there's a horrible thing happening on the ground and you were able to do strafing attacks with your cannon and FFAR, then you might stay on for a little bit and do that. If you have a tail rotor loss, you guys know you keep high speed, that'll negate the influence of it. But almost always you'll want to get back to base and try and get that repaired. You won't be effective. You certainly can't do toe shots. Now, the next one, engine loss and auto-rotating. Engine loss is the same idea as a tail rotor. It can happen from a burst of cannon fire hitting you. Typically, you'll see your engine indicator go all the way red and you'll hear it start to spin down. You guys know how to go from there. You cut your throttle. Some people like to say that you have to maintain some kind of forward speed, blah, blah, blah. That's not actually true. Maybe that is how it works for real, but this is ARMA. You basically want to get your forward speed as low as possible, maintain full down thrust, and then when you're about 30, 40 meters off the ground, you do up thrust to flare. While you're doing this, like I said earlier, the gunner is communicating if there's any instructions to your front. So, the next emergency is ammo expended. This is more of an emergency for the enemy, but it's sometimes inconvenient for you. If your ammo is expended, let everyone on the ground know. You want to let them know before you're fully out, so their leaders down there can start planning on what their contingency is. If you're in a mission that has more ammo, return to that area, a FARP or a base or whatever, get rearmed, get back in the fight. That's really simple. Next one is wounded crew. This is fun. This has caused a lot of little dramatic moments for us. If you get wounded, expect as a normal thing that at some point you're going to pass out. You cannot stay in the air while wounded. Horrible, horrible things will happen if you do. If the gunner's wounded, it's not as big of a deal. Fly somewhere safe, set down, get him out, patch him up. You need to get into a medic because he probably is going to need epi. Most of the stuff that's going to wound you in an aircraft like this is big. Cannons, heavy machine guns, things of that nature. It'll inflict a lot of pain, and you're going to need epi to come back to full health. If you don't get that, you'll pass out, and your gunner will just, be useless up front. If it comes down to it, you can potentially land with a friendly infantry element, get their medic to help you patch up. Of course, that depends on the threat environment. If the pilot gets wounded, but the gunner does not, go ahead.
No, this might be a stupid question, but does auto hover keep working if you pass out?
I believe so.
Cool.
Right. So if the gunner is not wounded and the pilot is, what you want to do is immediately fly to a safe area. It doesn't have to be back at base, but somewhere where you're pretty sure there aren't enemy. Set down and swap with the gunner. The important thing to note here is that any gunner of an aircraft like this needs to be confident as a pilot. It's really important that the pilots are able to be gunners and the gunners are able to be pilots. They work best as a team like that. The reason you do the swap is so that you're not flying back to base to get a medic and all of a sudden, the pilot passed out and now you're going to die. In a real Cobra, either person can fly from either station. That's not how it works here. Hopefully Arma 3 will change that. Now, the last emergency is dead crew. If you lose your gunner, well, that sucks, but you're still alive. Get the aircraft back to base, tell command, try and get a replacement. If you lose the pilot, it was nice knowing you. Does anyone have any questions about the basic emergencies?
I got one.
Go ahead.
Do we get parachutes so if the pilot dies we can jump out and survive?
I don't believe in parachutes, not in helicopters.
And
if you have one,
question.
you want to try it,
yeah.
Go ahead. But as SOP, I like to work from the premise that these are like real helicopters, so you don't parachute out of a helicopter like this.
So it's not like a camo where you can eject the rotor blades and
Right, these ones are not
go
like
up.
that at all.
Right, and the other question is fuel leaks. Is there any indication besides the gauge?
You'll just see the gauge moving really fast.
Does it still blink yellow when it's fuel leak?
Did it ever? It usually only turns yellow when you get to a certain point, I think.
It used to like flash every time it go down if you had an actual fuel leak.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe it does. I haven't seen a fuel leak in a long time. Alright, we don't need to do much crack app for this one. As long as you guys know and use your common sense when it happens. What I would like to do is I'd like to end on an auto rotation for the giggles. Let's go ahead and remount your aircraft. Nicely done. Reaper 3, ready?
Roger.
Reaper 3, start moving.
Reaper 3 moving. Reaper 3, lost engine going down. Mayday, mayday, mayday.
Okay, you said it 3 times. Alright, right now what's below you is a lot of air.
That's excellent.
Oh, there's no hangar you can land in. Oh. Why'd my windows break?